Hello ladies and gentlemen. Before the video starts, I'd like to raise awareness on a friend's GoFundMe. Her family restaurant has been going through some hard times and I thought I could help them by raising awareness for it on my own channel. A link to it will be provided in the description. Please donate any amount of money you want or spread awareness for it however you can. I'm not asking for much, just to give a moment of your time to help them out. Any form of help would be deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Get me, Galactic Control.
You'd think the release date of this one would have been pushed back by a couple of months after the absolute disaster that was Snow White. But if there's anyone whose determination is only matched by their stupidity, it's the Walt Disney Company. Now, am I saying this movie is as bad as Snow White? No, that's obviously not true. But just because this movie isn't as big of a shit doesn't make it any less of a shit. Lilo Stitch 2025 is the newest entry in Disney's horrible trend of remaking animated movies that didn't need to be remade, only remaking them in live action, which automatically makes them inferior. And while it didn't look nearly as offensive as most of the other remakes or have as much going against it, like the lead actresses being horrible people, the advertisement wasn't doing it any favors because the trailers were doing nothing to separate it from other entries, or even give people an actual reason to watch it. Not to mention some of the movie's most obvious problems being put on full display for everyone to see. The CGI, horrible. They look more like melted wax sculptures than actual aliens. The visuals, completely inferior to the 2D animation of the original. There's no uniqueness to the setting or how it's shot, it's just a generic looking town. The casting of Cobra Bubbles, awful. Like, this guy looks nothing like the character he's supposed to be representing. Have you not heard of a gym, good sir? The pacing? Obviously it's gonna be worse because of the stupid B-plots they threw in to justify its longer runtime. And the acting? Well, it's not terrible, but it's not something to write home about. Everything from the trailers just looks like they're going through the motions. Several of the original's most iconic lines have less passion put into them, and the chemistry between the actors is phoned in. Everything from the trailers to the clips on YouTube just looks so boring, and I was certain that this would just be another disposable remake to throw into the pile that most people would forget about in a couple months. And let me tell you people, it really didn't disappoint. It gave me exactly what I thought I was going to get. There is nothing unique or original about this movie at all. It is literally just Disney's Lilo & Stitch, but in live action, containing all the things that we already saw 100 other times in a better movie. Of course, now it comes with that classic Disney remake brew. A special recipe that requires them to throw in a couple of quote-unquote updates to make it more suitable for a modern idiot audience. The first big downgrade is the comedy. The remake's sense of humor is so lowbrow and juvenile with so many predictable punchlines that end up dowering the tone they're going for. One of the most important elements of comedy is that the joke has to catch you off guard in some shape or form. It needs to be unpredictable at least to some extent. If you can see the joke coming from a mile away, there's no surprise and no reaction. Every single joke in this movie is just too obvious, especially since they're mostly copied from the original without adding something new to them. That clip of Stitch shooting Lilo with the soda hose is pretty much a summarization of every single joke in this film. It's lazy, tacky, slow, and completely mundane. The original had a more brisk sense of comedy because the pacing of the jokes were a lot better. There's a swifter energy to them, and they were unique bits that played off the setting and the characters' unique personalities. Like Stitch being a sociopath who was willing to use Lilo as a meat shield. That is so messed up but so unique to his character without being too gritty, which makes it funny. Seriously, this guy was willing to let a 6-year-old girl get blasted when he could have just jumped out of the way. I'm sorry, I just found that funny. But because they wanted to make this version of Stitch more adorable and marketable, thus neutering his character, which we'll get into later, this brilliant bit of comedy and element to his character was completely removed. Oh yeah, they took out jokes that were actually good and replaced them with dumbass generic sitcom slop. I've seen political debates funnier than most of the stuff that happens in this movie. And it also doesn't help that a lot of the jokes they removed had a practical purpose in the story. The disguises in the original were really funny and over the top, showing how Jumba and Pleakley were complete dumbasses with no idea how to blend into a crowd. You're a four-eyed hulking fish and we're supposed to think you're a human because you put on a hat and some glasses? It was so painfully obvious. But it worked because, well, it actually worked. It's like a throwback to those classic cartoons where no one notices giant mutated turtles walking around just because they put on some trench coats. Or how Ash never recognizes Team Rocket because they put on some fake mustaches. The simplicity of it was charming and silly while fitting the story of them trying to keep a low profile as undercover aliens. And some of the humor came from how stupid everyone is for not being able to recognize the one-eyed interstellar being standing right in front of them. It was so good they even carried it over to the TV show. But instead of that actually entertaining side bit, now we have to make it so Jumba and Pleakley are using some sort of holographic technology to turn themselves into humans. The actors they got to play them while in these forms are extremely cringe, and it makes for less creative ways for them to interact with the humans while blending in. As for the character writing, they fumbled the ball with virtually every member of the cast. I don't like being picky or mean towards child actors because it's really not fair to them. Obviously, they're not gonna have as much experience as teenagers or adults at this sort of thing. But I have to be honest and say Mayaki Aloha as Lilo is not interesting. She doesn't properly adopt any of the mannerisms of the original version of the character. Lilo in the original was extremely charismatic and full of personality. She was one of the most unique female leads in a Disney movie because she wasn't a princess or a warrior or a heroine. She was just a regular human being with some oddball mannerisms. She had a really good character arc about trying to get along with her sister while processing the loss of her parents and teaching Stitch about being part of a family. She would act out due to her trauma and had a hard time expressing herself because of the bullying she was subjected to. But she was also very outgoing and bright and had a creative side she got to embrace with Stitch. She actually does a really good job characterizing a young girl trying to process the grief of losing her parents and feeling alone since their passing. The remake doesn't attempt to adopt these aspects of her character, but she's so much less expressive and energetic. She's not even an oddball or does anything weird. Lilo was ostracized by the other kids because she was really weird. This Lilo isn't weird, she's just mildly awkward. Why are the other kids mistreating her when there's nothing off about her? Now it makes less sense for her to have no friends. On top of that, they don't put any proper development into her relationship with Nani. It's practically turned into a background element, instead focusing on all the silly hijinks she gets into with Stitch. And too much of their chemistry is based in unfunny jokes that just muddy the friendship they're supposed to be developing. Lilo was one of the greatest kid characters of all time in the original because they properly captured the essence of what being a kid in her situation was like. This Lilo is just a generic kid stereotype. In this movie, her character is far less interesting to watch, going from a crazy outgoing free spirit processing the loss of her parents, to some mildly bubbly girl who's bummed out that no one wants to be her friend. They didn't even keep her wall of fat guy pictures. That was just gold. And because of this, her chemistry with Nani is so much weaker. The original took its time to show a compelling dynamic between the two, exploring their relationship as sisters and the sacrifices Nani had to make to become Lilo's caretaker. I know a lot of people talk about how great Lilo is, but Nani should be talked about more because I don't think enough people understand how compelling she actually was. She was practically the best character in the movie, going through more struggles than I think I've seen any other Disney character go through. What she had to go through was a lot to ask of her. Having just lost her parents in a car accident and suddenly having to raise her younger sister by herself when she didn't know anything about being a parental figure. She had to drop everything. Her passions, her interest, her social life, dating David, everything she was looking forward to pursuing after finishing school because now she had to take care of Lilo. I hold so much respect for her because of how seriously she takes her responsibility and how deeply she values her relationship with her sister. When the two end up fighting, it's completely believable because it shows the pressure that both of them are under. You can tell from the way they interact with each other that they were having a hard time even before Stitch showed up, which caused them to feel resentment towards each other. But they also hated it and just wanted things to go back to the way they were before. The original did a fantastic job showing an emotionally broken household through the struggle of the two sisters, showing how families are imperfect but still an important factor in people's lives. And Nani's fear of Lilo being taken away from her was so genuine and real. But in spite of that, she still kept a cheerful attitude during her screen time. She never gets too angry or too depressed. She had the right balance of emotion for someone in her situation. The original allowed her to feel genuine happiness and just share in the simple joy of spending time with her sister, making her a fun character to watch and grow throughout the film. This version of Nani is a giant stick in the mud. They spend so much time focusing on one aspect of her character that none of her other personality traits are allowed to be represented. Yes, she's struggling to be a caretaker for her sister after the loss of their parents, but at least have more than 2 facial expressions throughout the movie. She hardly expresses any happiness and acts like Lilo is just a burden on her. There's no authentic sibling bonding here. They even have to ruin it by making it so that Lilo says, "Oh, I like you as a mom too." That's not why their relationship worked. Nani wasn't paternal. She was a sister to Lilo. She wasn't trying to be a mom because she knew that wasn't what Lilo needed. She avoided the mom card because that was a more natural relationship for them to have. I'm pretty sure that everyone will tell you that a relationship between siblings is not in any way like a relationship between a kid and their parents, no matter what the age difference is. It just takes away the uniqueness of the relationship. And because of the changes they made to the story, the dread of the sisters being separated is absent. The tension of Lilo being taken away from Nani is weaker now because the relationship between them is less developed. They hardly even do the social worker thing that was crucial to the story. Nani was on a time limit to prove her ability to take care of Lilo or else they would be separated. But this movie is too fixated on the hijinks of Stitch to give her any proper character development. As for Stitch, they heavily neutered his character by making him more comedic and adorable instead of destructive and monster-like. Wasn't that like the entire point of his character? He starts off as a sociopath and learns to be a loving member of the family. They are just so in your face about the changes they made to Stitch's character throughout the movie. And I know this because that's literally how the movie was marketed. Every single trailer, YouTube clip, and promotional short released by Disney is just them shoving this version of Stitch down your throat. Oh, look at how cute and silly he is. Look at how adorable and cute we made him in CGI. Get tickets now, you filthy peasants. Stitch in the original started off as a killing machine, a sociopath whose instinct was to destroy everything he touches. It was the entire point of his character. He was created by Jumba for mass destruction and was treated like an outcast for it. He was never given a chance to be something else due to the circumstances of his existence. But when he meets Lilo and bonds with her, she accepts him and gives him a chance, which humanizes him. And it makes him feel like there's something missing in his life. He wonders what more there could be for him than just mass destruction. He was brought into the universe for that one specific purpose, but now he feels empty. It makes him have an existential crisis about where he belongs in the world, suppressing his destructive nature. The remake removes most of his destructive nature because they wanted to make him more marketable and cute. They probably just glossed over how silly he is in the sequel material and the cute plushies in the Disney stores and thought that he was supposed to be that, completely misunderstanding how his character started out. It makes Stitch's development in this movie less rewarding because he doesn't change from a destructive sociopath. Now he's just comedic and awkward. Remember that scene I mentioned earlier where he tried to use Lilo as a shield against Jumba's plasma cannon? That was so symbolic of where his character started and how it changed over the course of the movie. But because they removed that, along with other elements of his destructive nature from the original, his development as a character is meek and dull. Nothing in the remake comes even close to that level of depth. And the change they made to Bubbles is so painfully flat. Bubbles in the original was a fantastic middleman to everything going on. He wasn't even a villain. He wasn't even an antagonist. He was completely empathetic and understanding of Lilo and Nani's situation and tried to buy them time. He didn't want them separated. He was giving Nani a chance to put herself together. It wasn't something that he wanted to do. He just had no choice but to follow the guidelines of his business as a social worker. He cared about Lilo's well-being, and he cared about Nani even when he thought she couldn't do things on her own. He was incredibly lenient towards them and even tried to help them when Stitch was getting abducted. He didn't even care that Stitch was an alien. He just wanted him to be a well-mannered citizen. He could have easily just taken Lilo away at any time after seeing an alien in the house. But he let them be because that's not what he wanted. He wanted Lilo and Nani to be happy and what was best for both of them. Even if there was a possibility Nani couldn't keep custody of Lilo. Even after seeing the house on fire and taking Lilo away, you can tell in the tone of his voice that he's disappointed that it came to this. He wasn't even a guy who was just doing his job. He was someone who genuinely cared about the sisters and was trying to help them. Hell, he was invited to Lilo's birthday at the end of the movie. He's literally considered part of the Ohana. That version of Bubbles was so nuanced and they just turned him into a boring undercover agent with no agency in the plot except to waste time. He's just an alien hunter after Stitch. But we already have that with Jumba and Pleakley, so what was the point of this change? His character isn't even compelling. All the rough edges that made him interesting in the original are completely gone. He doesn't have any of the raw and done-with-it tone the original version had. It's just Courtney Vance asking for a check. It feels like he randomly walked on the set one day and they said, okay, if you stop bothering us, we'll let you in the movie. So now the human characters are less interesting, the aliens are CGI abominations, Stitch's character is neutered and sterilized, Pleakley doesn't wear drag anymore, the emotional core of the story is removed by sterilizing Nani's storyline and the subtle exploration of how the sisters feel about losing their parents. What's left to even watch after you downgraded everything? Oh, I know. How about we completely remove Gantu and make Jumba the new villain? Completely derailing the third act and showing how badly we misunderstood the original movie. Are you fucking serious right now? That's like a reboot of Pokemon taking out Team Rocket. Don't you dare try to tell me it was because you didn't want to go over the budget. You literally just made a movie with a budget of $270 million. You couldn't fucking do the same thing here? Gantu was actually an important character in the story, and he became more important in later stories like the TV series and the finale movie Leroy and Stitch. Heck, I would argue he wasn't even a villain at first. He was just doing his job. Sure, he was inconsiderate towards Lilo's safety, but he was assigned to retrieve a genetic monstrosity to prevent further destruction. But, more importantly, they utterly butchered Jumba's character. Jumba in the original was considered an evil genius, but even during later portions of the movie you got the vibe that he wasn't that bad of a person. He had a moment of reflection while talking about Stitch longing for another purpose in life, making him contemplate how he felt about the situation. He showed signs of reduced aggression when confronting Stitch, and he showed a sense of remorse when Nani was grieving the loss of her sister, deciding to help Stitch rescue her. He had a moment of humility which led him to accepting a new life on Earth. It was a genuine redemption for his character, but now they took all of that away and just made him a generic asshole, and it further muddies what made the original special. Lilo and Stitch wasn't supposed to have a villain, at least not in the traditional sense, because it was a more grounded and human type of story. That's what made so much of the drama work, because there was no need for an enemy. Ganto and Jumbo were more minor antagonistic forces in the narrative, and the Grand Councilwoman was even lenient towards letting Stitch go. But no, they thought that wasn't mature enough, so they had to make Jumbo a villain and make the last third of the movie into a battle of good versus evil, completely derailing the tone of the story. There's no proper build up to it, and it contradicts the buddy-buddy dynamic they were building between him and Pleakley. It's a completely forced conflict that makes everything feel more rushed. And not to mention, a running theme in this movie is throwing in random new characters who have no reason to be there, taking up roles that are supposed to be for characters we actually care about. Some random neighbor taking Lilo to adopt a pet instead of Nani, which was meant to show Nani doing something nice for her sister, giving Bubbles a sidekick just to further hammer in how badly they misunderstood his character. This is all filler and time that could have been used to develop actual important elements in the story, and they do nothing. I heard from somewhere this was meant to be a straight-to-streaming movie on Disney Plus, that they decided to make a theatrical movie at the last minute, and given how cheap everything is, I'm willing to believe that. It sounds to me like they needed the box office money to make up for the financial failure of previous works, and considering their most recent outings, it's certainly a possibility. The biggest problem with Lilo and Stitch 2025 is that with all these problems meshed together, it completely misses the core of the original story. I keep thinking about how lazily that first uttering of Ohana means family was, just by how it was executed in the trailer. In the original, when Lilo first tells Nani what Ohana is, there's a slow and respectful atmosphere to it. It reinforced how tough their situation was and gave Stitch something to think about and made him pause. That version of the scene was really good because it showed how much care the sisters had for each other, and with very little dialogue. It helped to explain the overall message of the movie, how even though families aren't perfect, it doesn't mean they're not good. The remake treats it like a joke. When Lilo tells Nani about how Ohana means family, it's cut off by this stupid slapstick where Stitch opens the fridge on her face. That was an important element of the emotional core of the original, and it's just made into another comedic moment. They even got rid of the ugly duckling story. The ugly duckling story was an important aspect of Stitch's development because it reflected how he felt lost and without purpose. It's how he starts to learn about the importance of having a family in your life and how he starts connecting with Lilo. Without the ugly duckling story, Stitch has no catalyst to start changing and developing. The character has no emotional core anymore because of this removal. They don't take the time to properly build up his emotions or how he feels about these things. They just made him into a comic relief character. Fuck you. The original had a smart way of showing this without too much dialogue, which made the message feel more special. The remake doesn't have this. It's too exposition heavy and just lays it out for us like this movie was made for 5-year-olds. The original was meant to be viewed by kids, but it was also a family movie that gravitated to both kids and adults. And that was made clear by how smart it was with its subject matter. The strength of family, and how even an imperfect one is still special. And that's what matters to us. That end credits montage was incredible because it really showed how they became a family by exploring different points of the year they shared together. But because this remake spends so much time focusing on how silly Stitch is and butchering the pacing of the plot, and all the terrible changes they made to the story, the translation is completely lost and now it's just a pale imitation. And it also has so many problems that can be found in the other remakes. Its pacing is horribly rushed in spite of being longer than the original, it barely does anything to divert from what we've seen before, it doesn't develop the relationships of the main characters properly, the setting is so droll and monotonous, which should be impossible considering you're taking place in Hawaii, it recycles the same lines and the same shots with none of the passion that was put in the original, and removing core elements from the original that were essential to making the story work. They don't even have Stitch revealing his alien form to Lilo, which was important to developing his honesty and humility. He never shows his alien parts for the rest of the movie after meeting Lilo, because the remake just has to keep him in his more adorable and marketable form for the morons who are gonna suck this up. A lot of the dialogue is crammed with so many badly rushed line deliveries. The characters are less expressive and limited in their actions because it's done in live action now. They don't bother to explore any of the new content they put in or the potential it had to expand the story. Every second of this movie is just a painful reminder that Lilo and Stitch was not meant for live action. The original Lilo and Stitch is one of the greatest movies the company ever made. In spite of all the alien stuff, it felt so real. It was a movie that really delved into the importance of family and why we shouldn't take it for granted. This movie is just another remake being made to milk money off of people's nostalgia. I really wasn't expecting this one to be so bad. I thought that at the very least it might be somewhere in the top 10 of my new ranking of the live-action remakes. But no, it's below that. It's like the new number 13 worst of these films for how badly it mishandles one of the most enriching movies in Disney's animated canon. Saying this movie is any good or faithful to the original in any way is a middle finger to the original, because the original was something that gravitates to people on a universal level. It tackled something universal to the human experience in its commentary on broken families and how they can heal over time. This remake doesn't care about any of that. Like, really look at the way it was marketed with the constant shoving of cutesy and silly CGI Stitch down your throat. This does not care about the theme of family and how important it is. It just wants you to buy their products. There is literally zero reason to watch this movie when you can just watch the original on DVD or on Disney+. It's actually good, and it doesn't have any cringe references to TikTok. And yes, that is an actual thing in this garbage. So fuck this movie, fuck the Disney adults who take their kids to see it instead of watching the original at home, and fuck the people who give it praise. And as always, fuck Bob Iger.